All right, so I have this question here from Francis, and Francis is saying, as a young creative cinematographer and video editor, how do I get enough capital in starting up my career, judging with how much inflation has affected the cost of gadgets and accessories? What would you advise I do? Now, this is a good question from Francis here. Um, Creativity and tools. And I get this a lot from people. They tell me I cannot start off my career because I do not have the tools. And a lot of the tools, especially in the creative industry, if you are a graphic designer, you are a videographer, you are a photographer, the tools, gadgets, very expensive. And it's not just because of inflation today, they've always been. So I want us to even shake off that mentality that there's an inflation or it's a current problem. It has always been a problem. I got into the creative industry 20 years ago, and things were expensive even then. It's the tech industry, and we must know that the tech industry is run by cutthroat entrepreneurs that put profit above all things. And so it has always been expensive. It will always be expensive to get gadgets. And as I said, they're cutthroat entrepreneurs. So once you get one gadget, they make sure that that gadget has a very, very short lifespan, that you need to replace it after a while. You understand? So there's always something dangling in front of you that is a newer version of what you had. The camera I bought 10 years ago, you can't use it now. You understand? It doesn't have the functions of cameras that cameras today can do. You understand? So the creative industry has always been one of huge expense. And I guess that's a different thing to go into, whether it should be that expensive to be creative. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of capitalism that has come in and muddied the water of creativity. I don't think creativity starts with tools. I think we should get that clear first. Creativity doesn't start with tools. And I think the creative industry has been abused a lot because you have people that are not creative but are rich enough to afford tools. And so we have a mix of people that are truly creative but cannot afford tools but have really good creative ideation. Do you understand? Their ideation skills are superb. And you have people who can ideate to save their lives, but they have the funds to buy fancy tools, and then they establish themselves as businesses. And what happens a lot is you have these people employ the people that have ideation skills. It might seem unfair, but the truth of the matter is, if we lean on tools as the soul of being a creative, then you would always be at the mercy of the person that has enough funds to buy these tools and accessories. Creativity is not about tools, and we need to debunk that first. It's creativity is not rooted in how many tools you have or how updated they are. It's really about how you think, it's about how you perceive and how you solve problems. And I tell people this. When I started out as a designer, I didn't have tools. There were no tools. One thing I had was a desire. I had a strong desire to create, strong desire. And I think that's the first asset a creative must have. If you're a videographer or a cinematographer, your first desire is not a camera. Your first desire is your first camera you have is your eyes. Do you understand? The first camera you have is your eyes. Do you see things in a cinematic way? Without a camera, you already see angles. You understand? You already see gradients. You already see things like if your eye is a camera. Do you see things that way? You understand? When you watch TV and you watch video content, are you able to see what they are doing? Even though you don't have the tools to do it, can you see, oh, this is what they did here? This is what they did with the color grading here. This is what they did with, the special effects here. This is what they did with the angles here. Are you able to pick out those things? Are you thinking like a cinematographer. So your first asset is the way you see the world. The way you see the world. So when I started out as a designer, I saw the world as a designer. I saw colors and how colors mixed. You understand? I saw fonts and how fonts were combined. You understand? I saw spacing between letters. I noticed all those things. So even though I didn't know how to use the tools or have the tools, I saw the world through the eyes of a designer. That's the first asset you have. So if you see the world through the eyes of a creative, that's the first asset. Congratulate yourself. You started your career already. Do you understand? You started your career already by the way you perceive the world. Do you understand? You started at a 5. Now you want to get to a 10. So you need to think of other things that you might have as assets that allow you to work as a creative. Now, for people that were part of my design academy, I used to run design academy, a logo design academy, and I had like about I think about 6 or 7 cohorts. I can't remember now, and it was pretty much fun. It was a lot of fun doing it. But then, for people that were part of my design academy, they would realize that it was a 12 class program. So we had 12 classes that would teach you how to design, how to be a logo designer, how to think like a logo designer. And for the people that have been, part of my course, they would realize that for those 12 classes, the first 7 classes, if not the first 8 classes, nobody is doing anything on the computer. There is no computer work. No computer work. We don't do any launching Illustrator, launching Photoshop. In fact, I do not. We do not even talk about any software. We don't talk about software. We talk about thinking. We talk about sketching. We talk about ideation. You understand? We talk about presentation, but we don't labor on software, because I realize the software, the tools, don't define the creative. So a lot of times, what I start out by doing in my design classes are by giving lectures, and I get them to listen and to pay attention, because in the end, when you look at the very soul of creativity, is about being able to pay attention, to be able to see things differently, hear things differently, smell things differently. And so the first 5 or 6 classes, they're all lessons in paying attention, listening to a class, thinking, telling a story. That's what it's all about before we start thinking of the more technical thing of switching on your laptop. Because a lot of people feel, I want to be a graphic designer. The first thing I need to do is get a laptop. The first thing I need to do is, I want to be a videographer, is to get a camera. No, first thing you need to do is to begin to see the world through the eyes of a graphic designer and a videographer or a photographer or a fashion designer. You need to see the world through those eyes. And people that begin to build how they see the world, when they get the tools, they get right to work. Immediately, they get right to work and they start doing awesome stuff very fast, because they have a cachet of things in their minds that they've always wanted to do. And that's the same thing with my AI journey. People that follow me closely know that I'm a great AI enthusiast in terms of creating artwork with AI. But a lot of what I create with AI now are things I've imagined like 15 years ago. 15 years ago, they've been my imagination. I've been thinking, I wonder how it will be to simulate this scene in my mind. So I've had different things in my mind that I've wanted to simulate, but then I couldn't use the tools. I didn't have the 3D softwares. I didn't have a computer that could run 3D softwares, because those 3D softwares, those animation softwares are very heavy. I never could afford a computer. But then, you know what? One thing happens when you're a creative. Your creative ideas always have a way of creating a path for you in the future. Never did I know that a time would come where all I need is a phone and prompt words for me to create those things I've been harboring in my mind. Those creative thoughts have been harboring in my mind. So you have a lot of people, they're trying to create with AI right now, but they never had creative thoughts pre-AI. And so they're like, how do you create such amazing things with AI? Because I had the thoughts pre-AI. I had a creative mind. So what I'm trying to say is that you need to have a creative mind first of all. It's not about the tools. You understand? If you are patient enough with the creative mind, the tools will find you. Do you understand? The tools will find you. You see, and this way I believe in spirituality and life. There's an energy we give out there. Once we commit to a path spiritually, and when I talk of spiritually, I mean how you begin to see the world physically, those tools we need will begin to find you. But a lot of people want physical confirmation, have the tools before committing spiritually. So you see, I started having those ideas of I would really like to create these things. And then life started to have people develop mediums by which I could create it and the tools will get to my hand. So if you're a videographer, you don't have tools right now. The first step of your career is to begin to have that spiritual connection with videography. See the world, create the video in your head. You understand? Create it in your see the world through the eyes of a videographer. If you are a storyteller, you want to be an author, you don't have a book deal yet, that's cool, but start telling yourself stories. Do you understand? Start creating your own private stories in your mind, your own short stories in your mind. And by doing that, you realize that the tools will begin to find you. That's how it goes. That's how it is. Life is spiritual and physical. So I must let you know this, that creativity starts in the mind. It starts in the spirituality of the mind, not in the external physical tools, not in the cameras. Cameras will come and go, you understand? But in the end, it's your spiritual essence that calls out those physical things that you need in the long run. You understand? So when I started design, I saw a friend designing and I loved what he was doing. And immediately I started having ideas of what I could do, but I had no laptop, no personal computer. But then, the first thing I started out with was my dad's laptop. You understand? My dad had a laptop. When I got back home, my dad had gotten a laptop. He bought a laptop. So all those things I was thinking about graphic design, I just started to apply it with my Now, I didn't have Photoshop or any of those other softwares. I didn't even know the software. I didn't have CorelDRAW or any of those softwares. But then my dad had Microsoft Suite on his system, and then there was a particular software there called PowerPoint, and that was as close to creating graphic illustration as it could be for me. It wasn't optimal, but it was available. And this is where I want to come to the point of stop looking for the optimal and start using the available. A lot of people say I don't have the tools, but what they really mean is I don't have the recent tools. I don't have the updated tools. I have a lot of people talk to me that are creatives. It used to amaze me. People tell me I don't have the latest Photoshop. I'm like, what are you using the latest Photoshop for? Why can't you use Photoshop from 7 years ago? A lot of people want to be updated rather than to be creative. So I feel one thing you need to think of is, what do I have that might not be optimal, but might be a good place to start expressing? You don't need the best red camera. You understand? I don't even know if red cameras are still things, that because when I was actively designing, red cameras were the thing. There's a camera called Red, and there was something that every videographer wanted to have, but they might be out of fashion now. But a lot of times what we are doing is trying to upgrade ourselves with trend rather than trying to update ourselves with our creative thoughts. You understand? So I started out with PowerPoint. I started out doing design with PowerPoint. You understand? Design with PowerPoint, it wasn't optimal. But then I started out with that. So you must think of, what do you have around you that you can use? People don't know this, but I'm a great photographer. I have an interest in nature photography. I take good photographs. There's a photo I have in my house, a photo of a fly. It's an amazing photo. People come and look at it and say, how did you take this photo of this fly? I have another photo of a lizard. And people say, how are you able to get it in this position? Um, the truth is that I had the image in my mind before I ever saw a fly. So in my mind, my creative mind has always thought, I wonder what a photo of a fly would just be like. Get all these colors of the fly and stuff like that. I'd already taken the photo in my mind. And one day I just woke up and I was strolling and I saw a fly on a leaf. You see, when you create it in the spiritual, the physical will bring it to you. And I saw exactly the photo I had taken in my mind many years ago. And this time I had a camera. And it's the camera I really want to talk about. The camera I used in taking the photo of that fly that a lot of people think, oh, you must have had amazing lenses and stuff. No. I had no lens. It was a simple click and shoot and point and click camera. Simple. Nothing, no external lens. It wasn't a DSLR. Just a simple camera. All I did was move closer because I didn't have a lens to zoom in. I moved closer. And because my mind had already taken this photo spiritually, the physical had to align. So that fly couldn't fly anywhere again. You understand? Because this was the opportunity for the spiritual to be manifested. You understand? So this fly stayed in position and allowed me to take that photo, even though I was using a crude camera. You understand? So two things I've said right now is start in your mind seeing those things you want to create, and then never overlook those crude things, crude implements. It's in using the crude implement that we go beyond creativity to innovation. You understand? Is in not having the appropriate implements, the appropriate tools, the appropriate accessories that you elevate from being a creative to being an innovative person. An innovative person is simply a creative that didn't have the right tools. An innovative person is simply a creative that didn't have the right tools. So a lot of people have been able to innovate things in industries. A lot of these things that you're using, lenses, cameras, rigs, all those things, someone created it because they wanted to do something that there was no tool for. So they created a tool out of a constraint on not having something appropriate for it. And that tool now became a standard. You understand what I'm saying? So I think a lot of don't ever underestimate what it is not to have tools, because then that's you on the threshold of innovation. Innovation. You begin to innovate, and when you begin to innovate, you begin to invent. You understand? So it's not just okay to be a creative. You must be an innovator, and then become an inventor. Then you now create something that helps people to further create better. So it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, not having the tools a lot of times can be a blessing. It can be a blessing. Don't miss out on that blessing. I think the last thing I want to say is, if you want to start out on your journey, your career as a videographer, as a cinematographer, and you do not have tools and you do not have accessories because they are too expensive for you to get, I want you to realize that your career doesn't start when you start getting paid. Your career starts when you start applying and using and serving. So what I'm trying to say is that you might not be able to afford the tools, but then you must look out for establishments and places that have these tools but need people to use them. So I have a lot of people that want to start out their careers, but you're not ready because you don't have the tools. You understand? You don't have those tools to start out. You don't have the cameras, you don't have the computer, you don't have the this. What I tell a lot of people is look out for people that have the tools but need the skill. So what I'm saying, they need the skill, they need the enthusiasm to learn the skill. Some of these people, like people around you, you understand, We have a lot of businesses that are looking for people to employ. A lot of people want to start out their careers, but they need to go through a stint of working as an employee, earn some salary, use the tools, then begin to buy your own tools. That's how it starts. To be honest with you, that's how a lot of it starts. If you're going to be in the creative industry, take some time, work with somebody, earn that salary, save that salary, buy your first computer, buy your first camera. And I'm telling you again, it doesn't have to be the best camera, but it can be your own. It doesn't have to be the most updated laptop, but it can be your own. You understand? But it comes from working with somebody. By working with that person, you earn money and you also get to use the tools. You get to use the tools. And sometimes it means not standing on a rigid salary or saying, oh, they have to pay me the highest amount. You go there, you realize, oh, these people are using this camera that I always wanted to touch. What does it take to work here? Are they looking for someone to work there? Sometimes you might even say you want to work as an intern because you want to use the tools. Just the experience of using the tools, very important. That's very important that some of us take for granted. The experience of using the tools is so important. Just going there and just saying, I will work with you people as long as you allow me this experience of using this tool. Just touching the tool. Because on my own, I can never have it. Some people go to churches because of their media department. You go to a church and you're like, oh, look at cameras. They have cameras here. These cameras I can't afford, and I always wanted to learn how to use one. Join the media department. Career doesn't start with payment. Career starts with expression. You understand? So your career can start in the church, working in the media department of your church, because every Sunday they give you an opportunity to carry that camera. If you tell them you want to be around on Saturday, you can go on Saturday too and film whatever it is they're doing in church on Saturday or during the week. You understand? You started your career. Career doesn't start by owning the tool. It doesn't start by owning the tool. Sometimes you need to work with people, volunteer in particular places so that you start to learn the tools. And if you are working, you get to earn money. By earning money, you get to a point where you can begin to afford the tools. And sometimes you have some of these places that are willing to rent out the tools. You understand? Allowing to rent out. There's some churches that are willing to allow you rent out some of their cameras. You understand? So that you can use their cameras for your personal project, as long as you bring it back, or as long as you work within the church environment, or whatever it is. And this is where, as a creative, there are also creative steps to get into these tools. It's not always straight out buying. A lot of times that's very hard because they are too expensive. You cannot straight out buy. So I hope this helps you one way or the other. I feel if you are a creative, you don't have the tools, begin to open your eyes. Number one, begins to see the world through the eyes of a creative. The tools will find you at the end of the day. But one thing you must also think about is that the tools don't need to be updated tools. They don't need to be trendy. They don't need to be the latest. They can be 10 models older. It doesn't matter as long as you start to use it. And then number three, you really need to think about starting a career doesn't mean starting a business first. Sometimes you might need to work somewhere where they have the tools, where you can begin to use the tools and earn money to begin to buy your own tools. So I hope this helps, Francis. I hope this answers your question.